I'd start with a very wide funnel. Where is higher education going anyway? Credentials, giving credentials, qualifications, degrees, testamers, whatever you want to call them, is actually our core business. But where is the whole business going around that? So I thought I'd start with in the future, because it's really good to talk about what's going to happen in the future, because no one knows any better and no one can contradict you because it hasn't happened yet. Who will be learning? Who will engage with higher education? Who will be learning? What will they be learning and why? And how will we credential their learning? How will we assure the community, employers, industry, our families and ourselves that that credential will deliver the return on investment the student has made? I'm going to try to talk very much in terms of those business terms and where and how will learning occur. So I put some thoughts together about this, and I used a model about the future. I'm not a futurist, but I did a bit of reading from one of our local people in CSIRO, and he suggests there are many different futures. You can have a possible future, a plausible future, a probable future, and a preferable future. So being an optimist, I decided I'd go for the preferable. So here is a vague statement, a short statement, with 5 things that I think are probably going to feature in the future. I'm going to keep working on this, so that's just kind of the big picture. What I'd like to do then is actually focus on 5 things that I'm going to pull out of that. These are the 5 things I want to talk about. So I'm going to quickly whip through 1, 2, 4 and 5, and then come back to 3, which is actually today's topic. I think we're going to focus much more in the future on what we generally call more of the hard and soft skills. The soft skills being the really hard skills in my view. What you see in front of you happens to be Deacon's graduate learning outcomes, and they are the outcomes around which every degree at Deakin is now built. Every one of those is assessed, evidenced, and we give that credential based on that. It would still be fair to say that most of the effort probably goes into number 1. And this is not a bad thing. The content-free degree is probably not what most people are looking for. You need to know your stuff, but you need to know a lot more than just your stuff. So this is a pretty well accepted argument around the traps these days, that you need much more than just knowledge to future-proof you with your credential. So we get a lot of focus on STEM or STEAM or STEM Plus or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of focus on science, technology, engineering and maths. I'm going to insert the A in there because I think you need the arts and the humanities in this world. We need an understanding of civilizations and ideologies way more than ever. So I think that's really important. But I want to focus on those for a moment because we keep calling them the soft skills, but they're not. They're hard. They're actually the hard ones to do, the hard ones to evidence, the really hard ones to measure. And more, I think we have to ask our students, we don't just have to test them on them, because it's very hard to test people as to whether they're a global citizen or not. So if with all my teaching experience I thought of the right test, I'd go, are you a global citizen? And you would say, yes I am. Okay, good, you pass. I'm being light-hearted, but it's very hard to test those things. So ask people for evidence, just as you would for an employment interview. Ask for evidence. So in my view, they're not soft skills and they're not co-curricular. Many institutions still give recognition of numbers 2 to 8 as part of the extracurricular section of the university or of their qualification. Well, what message does it send to the student when you call something extracurricular or co-curricular? It doesn't count. So if you think it's important, make it count. Make it count for marks, grades and credits, because that's the language that students talk. Number 2, the unknown future of work. Here we are. Graduate employability is front and centre for every higher education provider these days. So we are re-engineering the plane while the destination of the plane is being changed underneath us. The world of work is changing rapidly. We're in the gig economy. We're in serial, part-time, multiple contract. You all know what's going on. Platform economics, working online, startups, all sorts of things. We're in the sticky position of making sure our graduates are ready for that world when we don't even quite know what that world is yet. You may be aware of this particular report. It's not even a year old. It says this. It was published actually in Victoria last year, and you've probably seen those headlines before. Up to 40% of existing jobs may well disappear soon. Computers and automation will overtake some things. So if you want to future-proof yourself, you should be looking for jobs that involve high levels of social interaction, creativity, mobility and dexterity, because that will make you less replaceable by an automated device or a robot. Well, that's fine. Here's another one in case you're interested. This is the one that came out of CSIRO, and this is a very good piece of work by Stefan Harkovic, who actually is the author of that plausible future that I mentioned in the beginning. That's another very good one. And you know, of course, that this is the zone in which we're working. It's this digitally enabled. Although many new startups, of course, don't necessarily focus on the digital, but the platform and the technology enables things to happen, like Freelancer. Freelancer, as you know, is you can go and buy someone just to do the job you want, when you want it done, and so on. Moving along, learning at my place, my online space, my pace, whatever. If it's not doable on this, it's probably not going to cut it. This is where life is going to be. But I think learning is going to be much more into microbytes on micro devices, starting anytime. You should be able to, and you know, I'll just add a little ad that at Deakin you can, in some units, start the day you're ready, do it at your pace, do your assessments when you're ready, and finish when you're ready. Take more time, take less time. We've started doing a little bit in that, but I think that's where higher education has to go eventually. You have to be able to do it. It has to wrap around you. And I'm not talking for school leavers now who need the discipline of coming onto a campus and so on, but I think a lot of postgraduate education will be like this in the very near future, or it won't survive. I think teaching related tasks that can be automated will be, and they already are. Think about these, for example. So we've got things like explaining concepts, personalisation, for example, mini lectures, video, it's digital. It's automated because you can watch it, fast forward it, and so on. I am told, anecdotally, that students regularly put our lectures on double speed so that they can get through it more quickly, because that's how they watch TV. Fine. Hands-on simulations, quizzing, the quizzing tool. Not a great invention in my view for assessment, but there you are. Cognitive computing, machine learning and analytics. You may well know, for example, that we use Watson. Watson can answer student questions 24/7, 365 on a whole range of things. It's at the fingertips of every student. And of course we move on to number 3. So these are 5 things that I think are going to be key to the future, whatever the future is. And now I'm going to spend a lot more time on this topic, which is what you came to hear about. Micro and macro credentials. What are these credentials, and what are micro ones and what are macro ones? So what is a credential? Most of us think of this. It's a degree. That's what I would call a macro credential. When I went looking for a Google image of a credential yesterday, that's the picture I kept finding over and over again. It's a great big testama. Now these are not broken, but they are under threat. And this is where I'm going to be a little bit provocative. So how does this work? I would like to put to you that sometimes a degree and an academic transcript can be a bit like a frequent flyer card. That I flew to Barcelona last year. It was for work, of course. I flew all the way there, and that's recorded on my frequent flyer miles travelled record. What it doesn't tell you is what I learnt there, what I saw there, what I ate there, what I experienced there, and what I learnt from being there. I'm using this as an analogy about maybe a degree can be a little bit like a frequent flyer record. If that's the transcript, we also give you an academic record, which I put to you is a little opaque at times. And employers and others can find it a little bit difficult to understand what exactly can this person do. I put to you this, which I also found on the internet. This is a real academic record shared by someone. It's not from this university, but it is from an Australian university. Wow, doesn't that knock your socks off? So if I were an employer looking to employ this person, I would know that MIS 5131 Project Information Management V, I guess that's 5, 06166 credit 15 CP. What is that? Or, oh, they were exempt from that. Okay, what can they do? Or they got a WAM, whatever that is, of that. So I guess this is where I'm being a little provocative, saying, you know, higher education providers and degrees and macro credentials, we sort of need to lift our game a little bit here. I'm not saying this is broken, but we should be able to do a lot better. You should be able to see a more granular view of what a person really can do and maybe what they can't as well. And that would be good for the student. I'm going to be a little more provocative now. So if that were a degree, we let you in on a number or an acronym or something. And ATAR, I'm sure you know what that is. So if you get the right number, you go through the door. As you go through the degree, you gather up credits. And then you come out the other end with the right number of credits and we give you something like that. Or I've often wondered what that looks like from the student point of view. What we've done over the years, and I would say decades and centuries, is with a degree, we've modularised it. We've broken it up into units. So now you have to go through each one of those blue squares, each trimester, each semester, and you have to jump over the barrier and put those things in the bank and get credit in your bank account as a student. So let's just say in most universities, inside every unit, you do 4 bits of assessment, or 3 or whatever it is. So if you look at the whole degree, you're kind of looking at that. I'm thinking that's a typical undergraduate degree now. So really all up, there's about 100 things, 100 hurdles you have to jump over to get enough credit in the bank to get a degree. See where I'm going with this? I often wonder what that looks like to a new undergraduate student. And I thought maybe it looks a bit like this. So if we looked at it from another lens, there it is. Each trimester, we get to jump through those hoops. And if you work inside a university, you'll have a pretty good idea that sometimes those assessments don't actually hang together very well. They can be very siloed what goes on in those units. And so you get a big degree full of kind of bits that may or may not stick together. What we know from the research in higher education is that students can go and pay for the unit down the back there and do the assessment, which is in actually direct contradiction to the one that they did in someone else's unit somewhere else. I think we've done a whole lot of work across the sector and certainly at this university to make sure this thing hangs together as a whole learning experience. But still, this unitisation model has given us our own challenges. So, in a similar model, here's another description that shows you the same thing. Basically, as a student, master's or undergraduate, you sign up, you do these units, you get a certain number, on you go. So when in the unit in which you got 50%, which half of the learning outcomes did you not get? And if it was called how to get a very big bridge to stand up and not fall down, which half of that was okay for you not to get? You can see where I'm going. So it's all about measurement and so on. It's a bottom-up approach and you graduate when you get enough in the bank. I see some nods, so hopefully I'm not talking complete nonsense. So I guess I ask this question again. What is a credential? Yes, well, it could be one of those, and that is still the credential and will be for some time to come that has the greatest weight. That is what someone's willing to sign up and pay money for, because we generally see that as a ticket to a better life, a better job, a better contribution, a better education, and so on. So that's good. But new credentials could be a whole pile of things. They could be, for example, professional practice credentials, which I'll come back to, which is the way we describe our new degree credentials. They could be a verified certificate from a MOOC platform like edX. If I say MOOC, does that generally resonate with everyone? these free online courses put on the web by Ivy Leagues and so on. So edX in partnership with Berkeley or MIT, whatever. You can now pay about $70 to do a webcam supervised assessment and you'll get that certificate. That certificate then can actually be used for credit into an existing degree. I'll show you that in a second. What else could it be? You could sign up to a site like Code Academy and start earning what are generally referred to as badges, digital badges, indicating you can program in this code, that code, this code, that code. So it's very, very granular. I generally try to avoid using the term badges. The badges is the technology that digital credentials uses, but as soon as you say badges, people go, nah, Boy Scouts, NAF, trivial, something. So I just keep saying credentials. Okay, or it could be a Deakin Hallmark, which is another thing we're using, particularly with our undergrads and some postgrad courses, or it could be a whole series of these things that are available. There are gazillions of credentials that you can earn today, many for free, many unsupervised, some based on really good assessment, many based on really poor assessment and very automated assessment. So I guess that brings me to the next question. Why are they better? Why would you go for a digital badge or credential over a paper one? For these 5 reasons, I think, and you can read this and solve your insomniac problems using that report that's on your table at your leisure. 5 things. They're granular. With a digital credential, you can signify a capability, not just a mark. So it doesn't tell you 50% anymore. It tells you you can do this or you can't. Well, if you can't, you haven't got it. They're stackable. You can build them more easily onto each other because you can see what's inside of them. They can point directly to evidence. These are digital tokens so that when you actually click on them, because they can be displayed in LinkedIn, for example, you click on one of these things, it will point you to the evidence that the student submitted and who made the assessment as to whether this person could do what they said they could do. So for example, in theory, your digital credential can point directly to a 1 to 5 minute video of the student actually communicating, presenting, working in a team, whatever. So they're evidentiary. They're much more personalised because they're about what you can do, not what everyone can do at 50%. And of course they're machine readable if built to standards, so you can actually do a lot of analytics with these things. Sometimes we do analytics across the sector now. We say, this many people graduated, this is the median salary, but we all know that under that is a whole lot of interesting information that's clouded because we just measure people in degrees. And you know, you might have 100 graduates. Okay, they all graduated. 3 of them might be brilliant, as in got really high honours. Many of them might be ordinary, but at the end of the day, they all got the same degree. But are we actually using this technology to invent better credentials? My report suggests yes, if they're doing these 5 things. So we can treat this bit as the pub test. Does this pass the pub test? Is a credential better if you get something from edX, which is a MOOC certificate or a badge from someone? It's better if it communicates clearly to people exactly what that skill was. That would make it a better credential. If it's based on really good assessment, if it's just a quiz, life is not a quiz and you can't test everything in a quiz. So authentic assessment is assessment that really simulates and emulates the real working world. Were you asked to do a challenging, ill-defined problem-solving problem? Or were you simply being tested on your knowledge? Or a bit of both? The better the assessment, the better the credential. The next one is really, really important. Can you trust it? Who did this thing? Is it really, really authenticated? If we know it is, then we're more likely to trust the credential. Is it value for money? University units and courses cost a lot of money. People get disappointed when they don't see the same benefit. Now, sometimes they expect too much. The degree itself, just by alone, is not going to cut it anymore. You have to be doing a whole lot of other things to make yourself highly sought after. However, there are a reasonable set of benefits that I think most of us would want our children, our partners and so on to see come from getting such a credential. And of course, quality assurance. If you know it's Ridgy-Didge, you are more likely to think it's worth something. So if it comes from a named brand institution, if you know it lines up with the Australian Qualifications Framework, the regulator is all over it, that's good. We've seen a lot of stuff happening in the vet sector, not good. Obviously, we need to make sure we really keep the quality high. So, what's in this? I'm not going to go through it in detail, but I would like to pull out a couple of examples. The main part of that report in front of you is actually 19 one-page case studies, and I'm going to pull out a couple of examples about all the different things that people are doing with this. Some are open access courses or MOOCs. Some are paid access courses. Some are assessment service only. We don't have many of these in Australia. There are some in America, which you'll see in the report. So these are what they would call competency-based education in its broadest form. In other words, particularly for mature age learners, sign up to do a degree. We know you know a lot of stuff already. We're going to test you, decide what you know already, send you on to the college that you want to enrol in, and that you will just do the bit you need to do to get the degree, not start from scratch. And of course, other initiatives recognising achievement in a co-curricular kind of way. You might be interested to look at the Appendix B, where I actually compare one MOOC from edX with one unit from an Australian university which shall remain anonymous. It's publicly available information anyway. If you line up all the things I talked about between that unit and that MOOC, there's a lot of difference, but there's a great difference in the cost as well. And you might say you get what you pay for when you go to university. You do, but a lot of people don't need all the things that they pay for, so that's interesting. So here's one example. Arizona State University, working with edX, the MOOC platform, has a thing called the Global Freshman Academy. Probably just really started early this year. To do first year at Arizona State University, undergraduate, you generally do something like that, 8 units over the 2 semesters or whatever, and it generally costs you about that, $20,000. This is your traditional on-campus freshman, pay up front, credit based on marks. Now, the reason I want to go through this for a minute is, think about how we all go to university. You sign up, you believe the advertising, you go, great, I'm going to enrol, pay my fees. So you don't really see inside of much before you pay the money. You go in there, you do all the stuff, you hope you get enough marks to get credit for what you do, and so that's the model. That's what we would call the traditional model. Well, in this one, you do the same units in a MOOC platform, you do the webcam supervised assessment. Then if you get enough marks, you've got to get 70. If you get 70%, then you may buy credit for an extra $600 a unit. So in the end, you end up paying $5,000 for the same credit. Not the same experience, the same credit. So on this one, it's online only. You buy the credit if you get the marks. So you can do all of those MOOCs for free. You don't have to pay a cracker. You can see exactly what's in them, if it's good or bad or looks dodgy or whatever. So you do it first. So it's like an inverse enrolment model. And I think this is going to have impact. Now, I did say you don't get the same experience, and for a large part of the population thinking undergraduate, school leaver, they will still go on campus. That's why Arizona State has done that. They're banking on. They've got so much credence around that freshman experience on campus. This is not going to dent their enrolments. What they're hoping to do is attract a whole other stream of people, probably mature age, who can do it online, don't need a lot of the beer and skittles of first year on campus, and can do it for that, and based on success, then trade up, buy the credit, and they're in. They go into second year with everyone else, they remain online. That's a really interesting new business model that's emerging, so I thought you might find that interesting. We certainly did. So here's another one. Simon mentioned Deakin Digital. Deakin Digital is underpinning a new degree style that we're doing at Deakin, and I'm going to give you the same idea. So in a traditional master's degree at Deakin, you would do something like this. Don't count the number of squares, it doesn't really add up, but I'm just doing it for illustrative purposes. So if you did a traditional master's in IT, for example, the cost might be about that for the whole of the course to do the traditional way of this. You can do it on campus or online. You can be subjected to what I call, in inverted commas, the teach, test and tally method. In other words, we teach you, we test you, we tally up the marks, and then we decide if you're successful or not. But of course you pay up front, just as I described at Arizona State. But you do this at our pace, by the way. You do this when we open trimester, not when you're ready. However, the new model is this. So this is what we call a professional practice masters. So you do an opening unit with a cohort. You can join that anytime. You do a selection of those professional practice credentials, and then there's a capstone unit at the end. The cost is significantly lower. Now I must stress something. This is post hoc credentialing, which is the term I use. This is not for novice learners. This is for people who already know stuff, who are capable but not qualified. You've already been working in industry X for 5, 10, 15 years. You just haven't got the piece of paper that says you're great or that says you can do this stuff. It's for these learners. So this would never be, I think, for raw undergraduate school leaver or novice learners. People who want to change careers into business analytics and have no idea about business analytics could never use this model. But think of all the people who could be credentialed. Think of all the things you know that you now do in your job for which you have no qualification. Many people in this room are experts in higher education, but I'll bet you don't have a qualification that's got higher education written on it. And yet, lots of expertise is there. That's what this model's about. So this one, you do the evidencing, we do the assessing. So someone asked me this morning, so how do you teach those credentials? We don't. That's the point. We just assess you. You bring us your portfolio of evidence that shows us you can communicate at this level in this way to these audiences, and we go, yep, that's great. Or, not quite yet. Why don't you go off and do something, this, come back and have another go. I think I'm not lying, am I? That's kind of how it works. Good. Always good to check. So, but if you do the credentials, of course, you do it at your pace. You can do them really quickly. So what we're trying to do here is invent, in inverted commas, a faster and better and cheaper degree. In other words, you do it at your pace. It's very employment focused, and it's more affordable to the user because those credentials cost a whole lot less money, as you can see. Anyway, that's the idea. Or you could just actually get the credentials. If you're into workforce planning and you need people to get those credentials anyway without a master's, you can actually speak to Simon and he can talk to you. Right. So, just starting to wrap up, there are some other developments which you may or not know about. So other MOOC platforms, Udacity, for example, is using NanoDegree, NanoDegree Plus, NanoDegree Lite. I did read somewhere that the CEO has recently moved on from Udacity. I think he's moved into a chairman role or whatever. So Udacity's looking interesting. Udacity's doing some clever stuff. They're worth looking at. They are also giving credentials. But a lot more of the things that universities and higher education providers are trying to do with hands-on, work-integrated learning, supervised, mentored, coaching, and so on. You may also be interested to know that Coursera is piloting mentor-guided courses. So, bringing some of the cost back in. You can do very little of this for free. It costs money, you can see there, $248, to get a mentor from industry with more one-on-one projects, feedback, email, forum support. These are all the things you get if you pay money. So the MOOC platforms are massive, they are open, they are online, and they are courses. But open, you don't get much for free anymore. They are all finding their business models, which they needed to do. That's good. I just thought I'd share this with you. This is a project-based course launch on Coursera, create a business model, do all this yada, yada, yada great stuff. I couldn't resist sharing this with you, where someone wrote in and made a comment, and look at the bit in red. Please do not offer more of this boring, pure online lectures. Yes, give us stuff to get our hands onto. This is a website that you may be interested in. There's a whole lot of stuff there on credentialing. There's the URL down the bottom, which is based on a fellowship I've been doing over the last few years. So wrapping up, what I wanted to share with you today, some thoughts on where are we going in the future, because this particular bit about credentials is probably the value proposition at the heart of the whole endeavour. If the credential is flaky or doesn't deliver the benefits that the user expects, then macro credentials will be increasingly under threat. So how can we either reinvent them or use micro credentials to do the things that we all want for those in our family who seek credentials? I also put to you that if the new credentials do these things, then yes, they will be better. But if they are simply automated badges given on multiple choice test, unsupervised, I would put it to you they're probably not worth, I was going to say the paper they're written on, but they're really not written on paper, so there you go.